All right, so here's part 3 of your lesson with your frog. Sorry I keep breaking the video up. I hit finish instead of pause, so we'll just do a third part to this video. After you have traced everything with Sharpie, now we're going to start working on some pen and ink techniques, okay? So I've started on half of mine, but we're going to continue these technique strategies over to the other side of the frog. So the first thing that you guys are going to work on, underneath that top lip, you're going to do some hatching marks. Hatching marks are like this here. I'm actually going to zoom the camera in just a little bit so you can see it a little closer. Hatching marks are just a series of lines. They can be the same length, but they don't have to be. They can vary from short to long. So what I'm going to do under that lip area, let me get my pen going here again. And Miss Mavis the dog, I do not need your help. All right, so I'm just making those little hatching marks underneath that top lip. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, and that's going to go all the way across the mouth of the frog. Okay. And feel free to pause the video as you need to. The next step is going to be stippling. So inside the nostril, I'm going to come in with my ultrafine Sharpie and I'm going to do stippling. Stippling is just a series of teeny tiny dots that fill in the space to make it look darker and shaded. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing inside the pupil of the eye. I've already done it on this side, so now I'm going to come over and add it to this side. So like I said, just a series of dots. If you group your dots closer together, it's going to look darker. If you group your dots farther apart, it's going to look a little bit lighter. So especially around the edges, I want it to have that darker look, so I'm putting my dots pretty close together. And then they can be a little bit more sparse as you fill in throughout the rest of the pupil. Okay. The other thing, I did not have an eraser at home other than what's on my pencil, so I didn't have a good eraser here. Not good for an art teacher to not have an eraser. But I would recommend too erasing all of your pencil lines if you can. I just didn't have the means to do that because the eraser on my pencil wasn't very good. So grab an eraser, erase all those pencil lines if you can. And then, like I said, you're just going to add that stippling inside the pupil of the eye. Okay. The next part that I did, I added some texture lines underneath the eye. It kind of makes the frog look like he has some bags going on underneath his eyes, maybe some tired eyes. So I'm going to turn mine to the side just because that's easier for me. And right underneath that eye, I'm going to make some textured lines to make him look like his eyes are just a little bit more sleepy than what we want them to be. Okay, sometimes we get those bags under our eyes. Poor frog. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is work on adding some spots. So you'll notice that I have some spots around the eye, a cheek, and a little bit on the head. To do that, I just did stippling. So I'm just putting those spots in whatever shape I choose by adding lots of little dots to make a stippling mark. Now on this part, I don't mind if your spots are symmetrical or not symmetrical. They do not have to be the same on both sides. So don't feel like you have to mirror all of your spots from this side onto that side. I am completely okay if they do not look the same. So I'm just adding my spots where I think they need to go. Do kind of a half a spot right here. Okay. Then I'm going to do some that go up the back of the eye part, kind of like I did over here with these three. So once again, just kind of choose how you want your shape to look. And you're just going to kind of stipple them to show just a little bit of texture. And they can be various sizes. I'm going to do the same on the cheek by adding some spots. Maybe make a few of the spots bigger and a few of the spots smaller. And then I know I'm doing it on one side just to kind of show you how that's going to look, but whatever you do on one side, make sure you mimic that on the other side. As far as the spots, once again, they do not have to be symmetrical with the other side, but I just want you to make sure that you include that technique on both sides of your frog. Give some consistency that way. Okay. I feel like I need one more spot over here. Let me do... All right, I like that better. Okay. So now what we're going to do is come down to the legs and the body of our frog. The first thing we're going to do is add just a little bit of shadow underneath the neckline. To do that shadow part, I started out with some hatching. So remember, hatching are just really thin, controlled lines, some of them longer, some of them shorter. And then cross hatching is when you come back over them in the opposite direction, crossing over with those real thin lines. So just like that. I'm going to zoom into that just so you can see it a little bit closer. Focus. There you go. So that's an example of cross hatching. Okay. So the next step that we're going to do to our frog is going to be some shadow lines along the tummy. You're going to do this on both sides. So the shadow lines kind of tuck out from the arms. So where the arm creases is kind of where I started. I'm just going to kind of make those lines. They can curve a little bit. That way the tummy looks a little bit more rounded. And then they can vary in length. Some of them longer, some of them shorter. And then I just took from that area, I took some of them up taller. And then I took some of them down towards the bottom of the tummy. And like I said, some of those are longer and some of them are shorter. When you get to the bottom, it's very likely that some of them can touch or cross over each other. Okay, so I'm going to turn my little guy back around, and now he kind of has that shaded tummy area. Okay, on the toes, I'm just going to do some curves that come up from the back toes. It's just a little bit of curved lines. Once again, these are hatching lines. On the knuckles of the toes, I'm going to add some lines, just like some of those little wrinkles that we would have on our knuckles too. I'm going to do just a little bit of crease right above the foot area where it might look like it's bending a little bit. And then on the front toes, I'm going to do some curves coming in from each side. It doesn't have to be a lot, maybe just enough to give it a little bit of dimension, maybe look a little bit rounded perhaps. Okay. Now, our next step, you'll notice that I have some more of those spots along the front leg. So I'm just going to add a few of those in there. And you can choose where you want those to go. They do not have to be symmetrical to the other side either. Now, along the back leg on this side, you'll notice that I've added some cross-hatching in the corner, and then up along the thigh area, I just did hatching. So I'm going to do that same technique over on this side. So here I'll start with some shorter lines, and they might get a little bit longer as they go down. And that's just to kind of show some shadow where that crease is. And then remember, when you get to the overlap, like where the back leg is overlapped by the front leg, that's where I'm going to actually do some cross-hatching this time. So I'll do just a little bit of line that goes that other direction. Makes it a little bit darker. Okay, now you can also add a few spots on the back legs. I haven't done that to the other side yet. I kind of feel like they need something, so I'm going to do just a few. Doesn't need to be a lot. Do a few over on this side. I guess I kind of cut you off my screen here. I'm just adding a few of those over here as well. And you can decide how many you want. Some of them can be smaller, some of them can be bigger. Maybe one more over here. Okay. Alright, so let me zoom out so you can see my frog. I'll give you a minute to try to catch up on your ink technique, and then I'll teach you a little bit about how you're going to color those today. All right, once all of your pen technique is complete, you're going to need to get a set of chalk pastels. The chalk pastels can be found in the classroom. They are in the drawers below the computer case. So if you'll locate the computer case, I think they're the second drawer down. If you don't find them there, they're the third drawer down. So I'm going to choose a few colors for my frog. I know I'm going to want some yellows, a lighter and a darker on the yellow. And then I also would like to get a couple shades of green for mine. So I'm going to choose a few shades from the greens that I like. And then we're going to use some of those to do some color mixing and blending. All right, the colors that I'm going to focus on, I have 3 shades of green, a light and a dark yellow, and then I also have a gray. And I might use some of that gray for just a little bit of shadowing purposes, okay? So I'm actually going to start with my lighter colors. I'm going to start with my yellows, and on the upper eye, I'm going to use a little bit of that lighter yellow. I'm also going to use that lighter yellow here along that crease. And then, oh, I got a little bit of blue on me. I see it already. I'm going to use a little bit of that around the lip area too. So I'm going to come in right here, just doing half of my frog, and then I'll come over and do the other half too. But this will kind of get us started. Then I'm going to come back with the brighter yellow. Just going to go right over the top, and then maybe a little bit farther onto the paper with some of that brighter yellow. You're going to notice that I'm not doing a fantastic job of coloring. It's kind of a little bit scribbly, but that's okay. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I'm going to use my finger. You guys can use a blending stub. You can use paper towel. I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to start blending that light yellow and that darker yellow together. You do the same here along the lip area. Okay, now what I'd like to do is start blending those in with some greens. So I'm going to start out with my lighter green. Just going to kind of come in, do a little bit of lighter green here. I'm going to do some lighter green up here around the eye area, like so. Then on the underside of the eye, this is where our little frog guy, he needs to get some better sleep. So I'm going to use my 2 darker greens. I've got this one, and then I'm also going to come in with this really deep, call it more like a forest green. I'm going to make a few lines in there just to darken that up. And then I'm just going to make sure we're all connected there. Then here on the underside of the eye, same thing. I want that part to be just a little bit darker. So I'm going to come in with my lighter, not my lightest green, I guess my middle green, my medium green. I'm going to bring that over even in between the nostrils a little bit. I'm also going to bring that up towards the back of the head. Okay, now this is where we want to start blending it so that the colors kind of fade into each other. So I'm just taking that green. I'm using my finger. Like I said, you guys have blending stubs in the classroom. I don't have that at home. So I'm just using my finger. I'll just make sure I wash it before I switch colors if I need to. And I'm just transitioning where that yellow just kind of blends right into the green. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing up here around the eye. And then under the eye, I want to do that part last because that's where that darker green was. Now, if you feel like you have little areas, like here I got out of the line just a little bit, if you curl up a paper towel, you can kind of rub that area with a paper towel if your finger is too big to get into that space, okay? So I'm kind of liking the way mine is blending so far. I'm going to bring in my darker green again, and I'm going to go right into that nostril area and just darken up that nostril. And honestly, I don't even think that I'm going to do any blending there. I'm just going to leave that part as is. I like it kind of bold looking. Okay, so I'm going to take my light yellow green and around the outside of the pupil, I'm going to give my frog a little bit of color to his eye. Now that can be blended, but it does not have to be. Okay, the gray, I'm going to use that in the pupil area. You can use gray or black, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to see what this gray looks like. I might use both. Let me grab a black here as well. I like the gray, but I think I can do a little bit of color mixing if I put just a little bit of black around the edges. Okay, and then I'm just gonna, look at my fingers are getting pretty gross, so I might have to go wash, but I'm just gonna take a little bit of blending with my finger there. Like I said, I can get a Kleenex or a paper towel if I need to as well. Okay. All right. My next step is going to be to work around the lip and the chin area. I'm actually going to have a lot of lighter color in that area, maybe even some white, and then just a little bit of yellow. So right underneath that chin area, I want to give that some yellow where it has just a little bit of shadow. I'm going to do the same thing right here underneath the lip. And I did kind of go over both sides. So I know I was just showing you half of the paper. You're going to be doing this on the whole thing. So if you would prefer to go clear across instead of just doing half at a time, that is fine. Then I'm going to take a white chalk pastel and I'm just going to kind of put some white on there so I can blend those areas out just a bit. I don't want them to be quite so yellow. So I'm just going to take those, blend that area in just a little bit. It's going to have just a very subtle shadowing there. Okay. So then underneath that top lip, I'm going to take my lightest green and right in there, I'm just going to add just a little bit of that lighter green. It's kind of a tiny area, so I'm not going to use my finger. You have blending stumps. I'm going to use my Q-tip because that's what I have here at home. Okay. I'm just going to shake off some of my extra for a second. Okay, so now I'm ready to go around the edges of my frog's head, and I'm going to use that lighter green again. So right here around the neck, I'm just going to come in with a little bit of that lighter green on each side. Like I said, if you want to do one side and come back to the other, that's fine. Going to grab that light yellow, and then maybe even a little bit of white. You can tell I'm not coloring the prettiest. It's kind of scribbly. All right, then I'm just going to use my finger and blend that towards the center of the frog. Okay. All right. So my next step is to move on down. The tummy is going to be very similar to this part of the face. It's going to be pretty white. So just lightly around the edges of the tummy, I'm going to do some of that light yellow towards the center. And then very, very little of the light green. Not very much. So I'm just going to come back in with very little light green right around those edges. Maybe a little right at the bottom of the tummy. So like I said, not too much on the green. And then I'm going to finish with my white on that area, and I'm just going to blend towards the center with some of the white. And then I'll use my finger to blend that in. So hopefully it'll have a fairly light colored tummy once I get it all blended. Okay. All right. So since he has a lighter tummy, we're going to go a little bit darker on the arms and legs. So for the arms and legs, what I'm going to do is start with my light green, and that light green is actually going to come down the center of the arm. Okay. Then I'm going to take, I have, remember, a medium green and a dark green, so I'm going to start with my medium green. My medium green is going to come around those edges. It's okay if it overlaps onto your light green. I'm going to take that light green again and just blend it a little bit here at the top. Okay, now what I want to do is start blending those together, and I kind of work with my light green first and then work my way towards the outer edges of the arm. And if you need to, use a blending stump. Remember, I don't have one, so I'm going to just touch up any of my tricky spots here with my Q-tip, just to make sure I get them. Okay, then I've got my arm going. I'm going to use that dark green now to go over the spotted areas. Just going to put those right on the spotted areas. Then I'm going to use just a little bit of that darker green for some shadow areas, maybe here on the inside of the arm. Not a lot, just a little bit in there to give it a little bit of dimension. And then I'm just kind of dotting where my darker green was on the arms. Okay, So for the foot, that darker green is going to come down towards the toes. I'm just kind of putting some on each toe, framing in the foot. And I'm going to come back with my medium green to give it a color to mix and blend with. Now you'll notice I did not go down to the toes, or all the way to the tips of the toes, I guess I should say. Alright, so the toes are kind of little, so I'm not going to use my finger to blend those. I'm going to use my Q-tip since my finger's too big. I'm going to blend that out. Okay, then I'm ready for the toes, which are going to be lighter colored like the tummy. So I'm going to use my bright yellow in the centers, and then my lighter yellow around the edges. And it's okay if it overlaps onto the green a little bit. And then use your blending stump. Make sure if you need to clean it, you use a piece of sandpaper to clean it with. And then you have some colorful toes. Okay, we're getting close. Our next step is going to be the back leg. So for the back leg, we are going to start with our dark green. It's going to get some shadow on this inner part of the leg and along the arm. So where the arm overlaps it, it's going to make it look a little bit darker. Okay, and I'm going to bring that up just a little bit around the arm here. Okay, then I'm going to do a little bit of that darker down here along the base of the foot and the toes. And then I'm going to come in with my medium green. So here in the center, I'm going to use the medium green. Most of my leg is going to be done with that medium green color, so I'm going to go ahead and add that on. And then here, right at the knee part, that's where I'm going to bring in some of the lighter green, just for a little bit of highlight. Okay, then it's time to start blending. Okay, I probably should blend from the lighter green to the darker, so I'm going to start here. I almost didn't do that. And then down here, like I said, if you can't get into an area, just use your blending stump. I'm just going to take that color down onto the toes, and I'll bring in my yellows next on the ends of the toes. And once again, I'm going to use my blending stump, aka Q-tip if you're working at home. Blend those in. I'm just going to shake that off a little bit. Okay, so our frog is looking pretty good. I wanted to add just a little bit of shadow with my gray right along the tummy area. So I'm just going to come in here around the edges. Not a lot. And then find a finger that's somewhat clean here. I'm going to blend that gray towards the center. Like I said, my intention is to just give it a little bit of shadow. Okay, so whatever I've done on this side, you need to make sure you do the same on the other side as well to finish your frog. Okay, once your frog is finished, you have some skills and techniques that have been reviewed to you. You have drawing. I taught you how to draw a frog, symmetry, making it symmetrical on both sides, and we also learned some pen and ink technique, as well as some chalk blending technique. So once your frog is finished, you need to think of a symmetrical picture that you can draw, something that will be symmetrical on both sides of your paper. An example could be a butterfly or an insect that would be symmetrical. You are going to draw it. You are going to show me pen technique, and you are going to do some chalk pastel blending. So this is your group piece. I want you to make sure you take a picture and submit that for a grade. And then after this one is complete, you'll do an independent piece showcasing these same skills.